we neglected to properly introduce Mark when we spoke earlier today. So it's Chris here, just hopping back in to record a bit afterwards. Had this in the notes, but we were chatting before the show and so eager just to get going with the recording that we just went right into our conversation. Mark Radice is an amateur astronomer from Salisbury, which is in the United Kingdom. He observes everything from the sun, moon, planets, deep sky. He both sketches and images and uses a variety of equipment like an 11-inch Cassegrain telescope, a 90-millimeter wide-field refractor. He's got 4-inch binoculars, and as well, he has a 14-inch Dob that he takes to his local star parties there in the UK. He's a returning guest, and so if you just Google Mark Radice on Actual Astronomy, you'll find he's been on the show a few times before. And better yet, you can actually go and check out his YouTube channel, which is called Refreshing Views. He has all kinds of really interesting content on the Refreshing Views YouTube channel, which he does just for fun like we do. He goes into people's observatories with their permission and they give him a proper tour of it, not like when they're not around or anything. And then also shows you how he's observing, shows you some of his equipment that he's using as well. He takes you on trips. And this time when we're talking to Mark, he's going to tell us about his recent trip. He's really just back from this trip to the Winter Star Party that's held in Florida each year, though for the past 2 years it was canceled due to COVID. But this year they were up and running. And with that, we're going to take you to the conversation we just had with Mark Radice. I think you'll enjoy this one. The Winter Star Party with Mark Radice on episode 305 of the Actual Astronomy podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We're amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky. And I'm wondering, did Mark get a tan in Florida?
Oh, good morning. Well, it's good afternoon in here in England. So good morning to you guys in Canada. Yes, it was sunny in Florida, which was rather pleasant. But I've also got hundreds of mosquito bites as well. So what the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away.
Excellent. So we've been suffering through minus 40. The only good news with that is you hardly ever see a mosquito at those temperatures.
I see. It was really good. It's actually, we didn't have the Winter Star Party for the last 2 years for the lockdown. So 2020 was the last time it went ahead. So 21 it was cancelled. 2022 it was cancelled. So it was really nice to get out there again. And you just have this beautiful sort of tropical island. You got the palm trees. You got big telescopes. They got talks during the day, vendors. And at night, of course, you've got the beauty of this sort of tropical southern skies. You get to look through big telescopes, little telescopes, hundreds of observers, images all together. It's such a wonderful experience. I just wish it was longer. That's the only thing I need.
Yeah. Whereabouts in Florida is that, Mark? Like, what's the nearest major center, or where do you fly into? What, some of those logistics?
So I flew from London to Miami. So it's about a 10-hour flight. And then stayed overnight at the airport hotel, picked a hire car up. And then I'd say it's about a 3-hour drive south from the airport down. So you drive south. You know that film with Arnold Schwarzenegger when they fly the Harrier jump jets? Over that motorway, but that's the road you travel along. So there's a highway across all the tropical islands, across the Florida Keys, and then you get to, it's called Scout Key, because that's the name, because it's got this boys Scout campsite and the girls Scout campsite. So it's about a 3-hour drive south of Miami. Next big town will be Key West, which is the town at the very end. And then if you go further south, the next light pollution is from Cuba, from Havana.
Wow. That's awesome. And so you had sent us some photographs, and it looks like you brought a tent, and that was your accommodations while you were there?
Yeah, so the family don't come. So it's just me who has this trip from Northern Europe to the tropics of Florida. So everyone at work and at home says, you going to Florida for a week and without your family? So I do have to point out, I do camp for a week at the campsite. So I got a little one-man sort of backpacking tent, and then put so in the cabin on the aircraft, I put my Megray, my 90mm William Optics Megray, camera, binoculars, eyepieces. That all comes with me in the hold. Sorry, it all comes with me in the cabin, special carry-on bag. And I put the tripod, I put my tent, sleeping bag, clothes, etc. They all go in the suitcase that goes in the hold. And so I can observe, stay there for the week. Some people hire an RV or drive an RV, and they camp in those. So you can either camp in a tent or camp in an RV. And some other people, they also will stay locally, and then you drive in and out, get a hotel room or a motel room, and then drive in and out every day. And I'm amazed. So people say to me, "Gosh, you've come a long way. You've come, flown all that distance and stuff." And I speak to people who come from your part of the world, from north of Toronto or Montreal, Quebec, and they've driven for 3 days to get there. And then, of course, at the end of the week, they're driving 3 days to get back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I jump on the plane, I drink a gin and tonic, and I watch a movie, and I have a sleep. And the next day I'm at the Star Party, and they've had that huge long drive. So I'm very impressed.
Yeah. So about how many people attend?
So the numbers were really down. So when I first went a few years ago, obviously long before lockdown, there must have been 500 people. I'm guessing 500, 600 people from all over. The sort of northern United States, a few Europeans, a few Australians. This time there was only a few hundred. I'd say 300 people, I think there was. And I don't know if that's a legacy of COVID and lockdowns and people being nervous to travel. But the numbers were really down. So there's a lot more space, a lot more room to move. But conversely, there were fewer telescopes to look through. So numbers were really down. But, we still had an awesome time. We observed every night. The last night was really windy. So I was doing some sort of landscape shots, trying to capture shots of Orion and the palm trees and that sort of thing. So, we observed every night, but, for hours at a time.
Yeah, right on. So this wasn't your first trip, though, to the Western Star Party. Is that correct? You've been there before?
Yes, I've been several times before. And it's such a tonic because I don't know if do you guys get bad winters in Canada? Do I need to ask this question? How
Winter? I don't know what you speak of.
T-shirt and shorts all the time, isn't it, up there? So in the UK, we don't get the extreme colds that you guys get. We get, it can be cold, but it'll be, really cold snap down here in southern England would be sort of minus 10 degrees Celsius. But most of the time, it's sort of that grey, damp, cloudy, not quite cold, but not hot. And then you land in Miami, and I come out to the airport, we go to stay at the airport hotel, and it's 20 degrees Celsius, the sun shining, and it's what you can just feel your vitamin D levels start climbing straight away. So I went in 2014, was the first time I went. I just had such a blast. I thought, I've got to do this. Every other year I try and do it. Sometimes a bit more, and obviously not for the last couple of years with travel restrictions in place.
So when you camp there, can you just go and kind of set your tent up anywhere? I was kind of surprised that I know people have gone before in the past and they've rented, I think, what used to be called chickies, or there's these big tents you can rent and that sort of thing. But what kind of cost is involved? Like, do you have to pay for sort of that?
I'll tell you what, then I will, while I'm answering the question, while I'm answering that question, if you can Google the cost, and I can't remember what it is, like a couple of $100 or something like that. And you have to pay for your ticket to get into the Star Party, and then you pay camping or RV fees as well. So they used to have what they called chickies. So the first time I went, I camped. That means you got to take a tent and a sleeping bag and all that sort of thing. And they used to have what they called chickies, which were these thatched huts on the shoreline, proper sort of little tropical huts. And they had what the Girl Scouts camped in. And so I thought, well, rather than taking my tent and setting that all up, I'll just rent a bunk in one of these chickies. And I really didn't enjoy it. One, there were other people in there, so you got people snoring and you got kit and stuff. And but someone would always get up early and wake everybody up, and then someone would come in late. And so I didn't like it. But the real hassle was that they were designed for young Girl Scouts. So I'm 6 foot tall. My feet, or my knees probably, hung off the end of the bunk. So I thought, no, in future I'm going to camp. So I've never stayed in a chickie since. But I did notice this year what they'd done is they'd hired these sort of glamping pods. Is that a phrase you have over there? So glamorous camping.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
So they had these glamping pods. So people could, you had your own bunk, so you had your own space, and they had air conditioning and a little deck and stuff. So you could sleep in a little bit more in the mornings because you don't get too hot. So that's what I did. But no, it's on a first come, first served basis. So as you drive down the highway, you can't go wrong, because if you turn left, you get wet. If you turn right, you get wet. So you've got to go straight down the highway. And you come to the campsite and you pull in, you go and register. And you just help yourself to where you want to camp. And you've got these two choices. You can either turn left and go and camp on the sort of beachfront, what they call the berm, the sand berm, where literally on the beachfront. But I prefer to go and camp a bit more sheltered down by the trees. So you turn right as you get into the campsite, and there's all the trees there. So you get a little bit more shade, so it's a little bit cooler, particularly in your tent first thing in the morning. Plus, of course, when the wind blows, it can be quite windy with those sort of trade winds coming in. You can then camp and, you can then set your telescope up and you're not being buffeted by the wind. And some of the guys who rush to go and set on the berm, the beauty of the berm is, of course, you're away from all the trees. So you can see right down to the horizon. You haven't got any, restrictions. So if you want to image, if you want to observe with the big Dobsonians, then, that's the place to be. But I actually prefer to be on there. Yeah. And with my little telescope, it's only a 90 millimeter refractor. I can lift it up and move it around the trees. So trying to think some of the low objects, some of the classics, Omega Centauri, Eta Carina, obviously you can't see those from England, can't see those, pretty much sort of southern from Europe.
Yep.
And then, there they were just skirting the tree line. So I picked my telescope up, moved them to one side, and I could see them through a gap in the trees. But I wasn't being blown over by the strong wind.
So there was that much wind there. I guess it'd be pretty exposed in that location.
Yeah, and sometimes it's different weather systems coming through. So there was a couple of nights when it was quite windy, but yeah, we were sheltered by the trees and managed to carry on observing.
Nice. And how cold does it get at night? Like, does it get like 20 degrees or does it stay like around 25 or what's the nighttime?
Well, gosh, sometimes it got quite cold. You had to go and put, a fleece on or a jacket. It would get that cold.
Sometimes inside my house, yeah.
Yeah.
Wearing a fleece jacket right now, in fact.
So sometimes you put trousers, pants on or something like that, just because the mosquitoes, the little no-see-ums would come out. There was one day when it rained and then there was no wind that night and you could just feel the little bites, coming in because there was no wind. But the nights that it was windy, you could observe for a bit longer. And there was one night where it wasn't windy and you could just feel the humidity, you could feel the dew almost forming on every optical surface.
Do a lot of people camp? Do a lot of people camp there?
Yeah, so I would say 3/4 of the people camp there. So 3/4 of the attendees must camp. And then I would say some people are driving in and out. And then some people are in the RVs as well.
Are there many amenities there for restaurants or showers or anything like that?
Yeah, so there's a catering van, so you can get snacks and bite to eat and coffee and that sort of thing. They've got restrooms, they've got showers. And they're quite nice. They're campsite facilities, but they are nice. They've got a little jetty, so you can go for a swim every day. So you can imagine going for a swim before you go observing. So when you got
sounds amazing. Yeah.
So one of the things I try to do every day, and I've still got to process the photographs, was I photograph the sun. So every day I photograph the sun through my Herschel wedge so I can see the sunspots. So over the week, you obviously see the sun rotate.
Oh, cool.
And sunspots were coming and going. So one set of sunspots disappeared over the limb and another set would appear. So I do that, late morning, about 11, 12 o'clock before it got really hot. So trying to get the best of the scene. And then, of course, you'd be really hot because you're standing out in the sun observing the sea. Well, I'll go for a swim. Go for a swim in the sea and cool myself down.
Oh, geez. That sounds amazing.
Oh, it was just brilliant. Absolutely amazing.
So what other equipment did you take? You took your little 90 Megres. What other scopes or binoculars or anything like that did you take? Or
I took my little DSLR camera and some lenses. I have the eyepiece. So I have my eyepieces, binoculars, that sort of thing on the 90 millimeter Megre. But I was very fortunate because on one of my earlier trips, I was sort of lucky to be camped next to a group who are regulars. They go every year without fail. They've been every year. And one of the chaps who comes on there, Jim Pickering, he has a 22-inch Dob and a 28-inch Dob, and he still keeps the 22, even though he upgraded. He still enjoys that. So I'm so lucky because, I just have that chance to look through these big scopes. Scopes I, can't imagine having, by myself and enjoying it. Plus, of course, you're in these tropical skies. These are objects I just can't see from the UK. So, my poor little Megre, I used it for a few hours every night, but I did spend hours at the eyepiece of the 22-inch. So Jim likes to use the 28-inch, and that had the tracking and the go-to. So he would be looking at that. And sometimes we'd observe the same objects and compare the views, and we were trying to explore stuff together. So one of our highlights, I think I sent you the picture, was Abel 1367. which is the galaxy cluster in Leo.
Yeah.
And so a bit like Markarian's chain, you've got an eyepiece that's full of galaxies, but it's about 10 times richer. I mean, there's loads of galaxies and all close together, all touching. The problem is they're about 10 times fainter as well, so a lot further away than Markarian's chain. I know it's brilliant. We have this big telescope and we're calling across to each other. What can you see? Comparing my notes with his notes, stuff. So there we were under this tropical sky, with a 22-inch, mirror, 22-inch telescope, using a step ladder to get up to the eyepiece. It was that tall.
Oh, wow. That's that sounds like a great way to spend the night under a dark sky with a 22-inch telescope. Wonderful. Wow.
So the other thing I did was try and photograph Jupiter. Every evening I photograph Jupiter and try to get so one of the things I will do is get around to processing the moons, obviously change over that week. So every night they'll be in a different position. And those charts you get in the Sky and Telescope and Astronomy Now where the moons, that little sine wave as they go around their orbits. So I want to try and produce that for the week as well. So outermost Callisto and innermost Io as they do their orbits.
Mm-hmm. So Mark, you've been there a few times. How consistent is the weather? Like, are you often cloudless and able to observe?
Well, it's never perfect. Mm-hmm. It's not always perfect, I should say, in the sense that, if you're there for the week, you might lose a night or two, or you might lose parts of the nights for cloud or high winds. But I would say consistently, it's been clear a number of nights, for the worst. So I first went in 2014 and it was glorious, hot in the day, warm at night. There was no dew because there was always a gentle breeze. And I had an absolutely wonderful time. I can remember one day it rained really hard, absolutely chucked it down. And I thought, thank God for that, because I'm so tired from having like 4 all-nighters. It was a real relief to have a clear night. To have a cloudy night. Yeah. And the next day, the sky was so clear because the rain had all washed all that dust and stuff out of the sky. It was fresh wind, fresh air coming behind it. And we were about 3 a.m. and we're standing at the berm, having a coffee, having a chocolate brownie. And I was like, oh no, look out over the sea, look out to the south. And there was this cloud, this band of cloud coming in. I thought, oh no, it's clouding over again. And the guy next to me said, no, he said, that's not cloud, that's the Milky Way rising.
Oh, wow.
The summer Milky Way. And I thought it was cloud, but of course it was out to sea. So there's no light pollution out to sea. Oh, yeah. So I would say it's consistently, it's good. You're gonna get some, multiple hours of observing it over the week. And I do more observing in this 1 week than I do in whole months back in England.
Oh, yeah.
Well, just because you dedicate the time. So I don't mind staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning because you can have a lie-in or try and lie in the morning. Whereas, of course, back home with work and family, it's not so easy to do that.
Yeah. Well, certainly when Chris and I go down to grasslands for 2 or 3 nights, I'm usually pretty much a zombie by the end of that. So I can't even imagine, a full week. But like you say, I guess when you sort of plan for it and that's the purpose, you yes. find probably opportunities for the odd nap or a little additional sleep.
So the worst thing was, what I hate doing is coming back. It's lovely to see the family. It's lovely to be back home, but it's cold and grey, and I'm like, oh God, where have I come back from? And then, so I flew back on Monday morning. So I landed Monday morning. I hadn't been to bed because it's the overnight flight from America back to the UK. So I got home Monday afternoon or Monday lunchtime-ish. Had to stay awake, don't go to bed, don't have a sleep, because if I can stay awake till about 8 or 9 o'clock, I can reset my jet lag all in one go. But then, of course, I wake up at like 4 in the morning because that's the time I'd naturally be getting out. So, ready to go. And then I went straight back to work. So I was back at work on Tuesday, and I got to Friday evening, and I thought, I am absolutely shattered. I had a week of sleep deprivation, plus jet lag, plus a week at work. So it's been quite nice to chill out. So it is a downside, but I think it's worth every hour of the jet lag. It's worth it.
Then you got some guy bugging you to come on a podcast.
It's always a pleasure to catch up with you guys. So please don't think it's a bugginess. No. It's always good. No.
What I was wondering though, because I was looking at the website in preparation for this, and you mentioned just like going for a swim and doing some other things of that nature. But what other activities are on during the day? You sent me a picture of somebody giving a talk. Are there talks every day, or how do they?
They had trade stands. So there were trade stands were a bit down this number, I think, because maybe there were fewer attendees, or maybe just I don't know, some side effect of the cancellations last year. So there weren't many trade stands, but there's always, earlier experiences, and hopefully in future as well, there'll be more trade stands. So, I get quite nervous with my credit card. What am I going to buy? What have I forgotten that I need to replace, for the week? So they have talks during the day as well. So there was 2 talks every day. There's a second-hand sort of, bring and buy sales, so people are selling stuff, people are buying stuff as well. We went out a few days. You can go into town and go and grab a bite to eat or go for a walk. Some people went to Key West as well, which is quite a cool sort of bohemian place to go and visit. People get fishing or out to the coral reef. So there's loads to do. It's a week in the sun.
Nice. Very good. And so it sounds like there's a bit of a beach there. It's a pretty small, it's a bit of an island that you're on there, but it's pretty small, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, it would take you several minutes to walk, the length of the campsite, and that doesn't take you the whole length. You can then jump in your hire car, which is what I had a hire car for the week, and the next island up the highway is called By a Honda, and that's a nature reserve, so you pay your entrance fee. You've got a cool little boutique shop, little place to grab a bite to eat, and again, you can visit the beach there, swim, and it's all the nature reserve as well. So there's loads to do, loads of things to see.
Yeah,
but I quite enjoy just chilling out for a week and catching up on some reading, getting my notes ready for the night, and enjoying visiting other, looking at other setups and other telescopes.
Yeah, you mentioned buying some stuff. Sounds like you bought a flashlight for a change.
Oh yes, so I brought it with me. Actually, you'll be well impressed with this. So this is an Explore Scientific red flashlight. So it's quite cool. But one of the things, so I put this on my old flashlight. It's got the lanyard.
Nice.
So you put it around your neck, because I'm always putting my flashlight down, and then I think, where the hell did I put it? Because I've turned the light on. You're moving around in the dark trying to find where you left it, but of course you can't see it because it hasn't got a light on. So that's how I treated myself to, the big spender that I am. And what else did I buy? So I got my Herschel wedge, which I use for my white light solar observing, so I can see the sunspots. But the view is still quite bright when you look through the eyepiece. So you have to have a neutral density filter or polarizing filter just to reduce that glare down to a comfortable level. Yeah. But mine's still in my cupboard back in England. So I actually bought a second-hand moon filter. So ironically, I was observing the sun while using a moon filter. So I could bring that glare down just to a sort of a comfortable level for the eyes.
So speaking of the things you're observing, you mentioned taking a look at the galaxy clusters and that sort of stuff. What was sort of the best things that you're able to see that you can't see back in England, which is a very similar latitude as where we are in Saskatchewan?
Also, my favourite sight, without a shadow of a doubt, has got to be in the small hours of the morning, watching that Milky Way rise above the sea, being able to see, the whole of the the sting of Scorpius, and you got Sagittarius and all the star clouds and all the open clusters. It's such a beautiful sight, being able to see that. Absolutely wonderful. And of course, we can't see a lot of that from back here. But you get to see famous sort of deep sky objects would have to be Eta Carina. Because if you think the Orion Nebula is big and bright, the Eta Carina is huge, much bigger. And we're only seeing it a few degrees above the horizon. So some nights it's not observable, just because if you've got cloud and haze low down, Eta Carina just sort of poking through quite weakly. Omega Centauri. So Omega Centauri, this huge, it was thought at first to be a globular cluster because of that dense ball of stars. But the research is now showing that it's actually a core of a galaxy that's been swallowed up by the Milky Way. That's just the nucleus of the galaxy. That's all that's left. So Omega Centauri, which I heard a lot of the guys over there, they call it "Oh my God Centauri." So Oh my God Centauri is setting. And I mean, even in my little 90mm telescope, it's a big cluster, way bigger. And then M13 will be rising up in Hercules, and that's our big globular cluster up here, up in the north of Europe. So it's interesting. You can swing with the telescope. You swing across and you have a look at M13, and you go, "Oh my God, it's about a quarter the size, quarter the diameter." So it's a big cluster, and you just can't see that from back in the UK. What else I have a look at? So one of the other things as well about Florida is the sea temperature is the same as the land temperature. So maybe in the small hours of the morning, the two equalize, and there is no poor seeing. The seeing is just perfect. There's no turbulence. And I sort of read about this, and I never really experienced it. But there's another guy called Bruce who was camped a little way down from us, and he's got this 12-inch f8 planetary Newtonian, which looks like a huge circus cannon, absolutely. But he's flocked the inside. He's got baffling. He's got a cooling fan. He's got this tiny secondary, very thin spider vanes. Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the primary mirror, you can't see the tube. It is that dark inside. Wow. Absolutely. All homemade, all amateur, telescope making made.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, with a pair of binoculars, looking at Jupiter. And Jupiter looked like a ball bearing. Yeah, it looked like a Voyager photograph.
Wow.
You could see, just look, you didn't have to adjust your eyes. You don't have to wait for a period of good seeing. You could see those features inside the Great Red Spot. You could tell which moon was which by their relative color and size. There's Io, it's small and orange, and there's Europa's white and Ganymede's bigger and gray. You just by looking, you can see the different moons and stuff.
Holy smokes.
And the scene was just perfect. There was just no tremor.
Wow. Yeah, that 12-inch f8, is that I think you sent a photograph of that one. Was it blue?
Yeah, that's right. It's Big Blue, he's called. Bruce calls that. So I actually spent some time with Bruce, and he talked us through the design and how he built it. So I'm going to do a YouTube video on that. So I'll edit that down and get that done. But if anyone's into making a telescope or optimizing the views, there's loads and loads and loads of tips in there. But because it's 12-inch f8, it is a huge, the tube's 8 foot long, plus it's got the bit on the front as well. So it's actually a 10-foot long tube.
And does it, I didn't look at the photograph too closely. Does the tube separate for transportation?
Yeah, so he's got a big pickup truck, because I think you need but the front end comes off, so he can put it in there. But he has it on one of those English yoke mounts. Have you seen those?
Yeah,
like the Palomar observatories. Yeah. And it's just a whopper of a mount. It's absolutely, it's all homemade, all made in his machine shop. On his wooden machine shop. So it's it's not a grab and go telescope, but he's there for the week. So he sets it up on the first day, gets it polar aligned, it tracks perfectly, and he's there for the week, so he can leave it there.
Sounds like a dream setup.
So,
and that's sorry to interrupt you there, Chris, but that's the beauty of the Star Party.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you wander around and Jim's looking at this Leo galaxy A-ball cluster, and there's 12 galaxies in the field of view. My little telescope's looking at Omega Centauri. Bruce is looking at Jupiter. And you can just wander around having a look through all these different eyepieces, and someone will be imaging something over there, so you have a look at what they're photographing and capturing and stuff. It is, we're all of a like mind. We're all there to enjoy it, enjoy being under the night sky. So it is really good fun.
Mm-hmm. That aspect, Mark, and then the other part where you can just leave your equipment set up, and when you're tired, you just crawl into bed. I just love these types of trips for all of those reasons. To look through other equipment, other objects, and just kind of the maximization of observing, because you can just fall asleep beside your telescope. It's wonderful.
Oh, perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in terms of amazing views, then I'm also going to throw in. So it was quite interesting. So we can see M82. Obviously, that's way up north in Ursa Major, but through the 22-inch, when we crank the power up, you could see the individual, the clumps and the knots and the dark lanes in that edge-on spiral. And Jib, then he has a Tech Apo refractor as well that he uses for his imaging. So he's got quite a cool setup. So he can leave. Wow. He gets the Apo, set up, and he starts capturing his data. And he'll leave it for 4 or 5 hours, just clicking away, cameras clicking away, gathering data, and he'll spend several hours then observing with the big dog, so he can capture data and do his observing at the same time. So he then captured it with the telescope, and then we were looking at it through the big dog as well. Seeing the features, the camera's picking up. We can also pick up in the big dog as well. Just having a look through my notes. Then, did I show you the picture of M51?
Yeah, I was surprised you sketched M51 from down there.
Yeah. So obviously this is about 3 or 4 in the morning, so you have to wait for M51 to rise higher in the sky. But again, it just looked like, so say if someone's imaging and you captured a 1 minute sub, and you can see the spiral arms, but there's none of that sort of real high, it's not a highly processed image. And that's what it looked like through the eyepiece. You could see the spiral arms, you could see the star clouds, the clumps of star-forming regions in the spiral arms in M51, see the little satellite galaxy off to one side. Absolutely wonderful, just being able to see this stuff in real time, without not having to worry about camera and image processing and bringing everything out. What's another sketch here? Here it is. It's the antenna galaxies down in
Corvus.
Yeah. And again, I've hold up to the camera there as well. That's coming through. But
I can see them.
It looks like an R0 or an A. These two ones are sort of ring.
Like one of those Roman letters of some sort.
Yeah.
I don't know what they are.
But that's the beauty, it's a dark sky. It's not super dark, it's affected by light pollution from the nearby town. But certainly when you're looking south out to the sea, you can. It's pretty dark. There's no light pollution to the south, and that's what the galaxies are and stuff. And we looked at so many more objects. I'm trying to think of another one. Hickson 61. Do you know that one? It's called the Box.
Oh, yeah.
You know that one? So
I've never seen it, but I know it. Yeah.
It's well worth hunting down if you can. I presume obviously you need a pretty big telescope.
Pretty big scope for that one, yeah.
Yeah. So it was 3 edge-on spirals, and there's 1, 2, and then 3.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one is a little lenticular galaxy as well. So it actually makes, a sort of a quadrilateral shape. So it's nicknamed the Box.
Neat.
Cool.
I was wondering though, you mentioned shooting a video there of the 12-inch scope. Did you shoot any videos for your Refreshing Views YouTube channel? Like, did you do all kinds of video shooting, or did you just shoot a little bit of the odd thing?
I shot a little bit of the odd thing. So Refreshing Views is the YouTube channel that I run. It is just a hobby. It's just because I enjoy doing it. So it's not a business or anything like that. It's just fun. And work's been pretty busy over the last few months. Yeah. So it's really nice actually just say I'm not going to do work. I'm not, capturing. It's not a work trip. It was just to enjoy being at the Star Party, looking at these beautiful southern objects, big telescopes, observing with other people. And not be that person who wanders around with a camera, trying to capture things. So Bruce kindly talked me through his telescope, the 12-inch f8. Jim had his, 2 big Dobbs and the imaging Apo, the Tech 180. So I spent some time with him and with some other guys nearby. So 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. But what I will do is I'm going to put together some sort of little short video clips to say the sun rotating over the week and sunspots appearing and disappearing as the sun rotates. We've got Jupiter's moons rotating. We have the Green Comets 2020 ZTF, or I should say for your North American listeners. That went past the Hyades. That was quite cool seeing that every night.
I bet you that was probably pretty neat. Did you get a look at it through these 22 and 28-inch scopes?
Well, we had to really, didn't we?
Yeah.
Just make out, if you looked with a bit of averted imagination, you could just see the very faint ion tail as well.
Yeah. Now, I got to ask, in those big scopes, because you're the first person I've talked to that pointed a really big scope at it, through the 28-inch, could you see the green color?
Hinting at it, but wasn't obviously green. I think it comes out best in the camera, that sort of color. Mm-hmm. It did look like a photograph, just you have that big mirror capturing all that light. Yeah. I don't know I had a question for you guys then. So in the UK, it hit the press. The press was talking about this bright green comet, and first time to see it for 50,000 years. You must go out and see it. And I was thinking it was quite hard to find. I could just see it as a smudge from my sort of village location. If I knew where to look, it went past Polaris. And so I knew where to look and could find it and see it, and saw it naked eye, saw it with the binoculars, saw it with the telescope. But people at work were saying, "Oh, I went out to go look for this bright comet, couldn't find it." Of course you couldn't. You live in a town and you didn't know where to look, and it seemed to be almost not irresponsible. I think that's probably too strong a word, but certainly misleading for the press to say, "Go outside, see this comet." So I don't know. Did you guys have the same in Canada?
Yeah, I had similar experiences at work where folks would ask me about, if I've seen the comet, and then a few of them attempted it themselves. And similar story, just explained that it's kind of funny how well, maybe not funny. It's just weird how the media latches on to some of these astronomical events and makes them sound spectacular when in fact they're some of these events like a supermoon or this green comet were really not as spectacular as other events that we've experienced. So it's unfortunate that the media builds things up, because I think that at the end of the day it maybe steers some people away from astronomy, because they hear about this amazing bright comet, they go out, they can't find it, get frustrated, and maybe that's their astronomy experience, which is too bad. But
yeah, there's a joke magazine in the UK called Viz, which is kind of an adult's rude and a magazine, and they had a feature in there about the disappointeds. The disappointed meteor shower is going to come along, and there's no point going out to see it anyway because it'd be cloudy and no one would see anything.
So, Mark, have you gone to other star parties as well? Say closer to home or abroad?
Yeah, so we got to star parties in the UK. So our big two, there are more, but there are big two. So one is the Kellingheath, the Norfolk Equinox Star Party. That's one I spoke to you about last time up on the English coast. Yep. And that's good fun. And again, a few hundred observers, big telescopes, little telescopes, sort of social thing. But that's only for sort of a long weekend that the actual main event is, whereas this winter star party is for a week. I'd love to do some of the other North American ones, or even better, go to like Australia, do some of their star parties.
Mm-hmm.
That would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think one day when I'm retired, I've fortunately got too many years to go yet, but going out to Florida in February for the winter star party, and then you'd have Cherry Springs, and then you'd have Texas Star Party and Okie-Tex, and you'd finish up. There's one in British Columbia, isn't there? The Mount Cobau, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I've been to that one. It's get a good vehicle.
Yeah,
that's gonna challenge your driving and other skills on the way up.
Yeah, but I think just to have a sort of 6-month road trip, to combine, exploring North America, but do it in an RV, and I think that'd be good fun to do, because your nearest one's Grasslands, isn't it, from what you were saying earlier?
Well, we really just do the Grasslands as more like a public outreach event than a proper star party. People should kind of know that. I think initially I kind of hoped it would be, sort of evolve maybe into more like a regular star party, but there's a couple limiting factors. It's extremely remote. It's the darkest place that I've ever been to, but it's just so remote, and it gets toasty warm during the day. You can be up into the mid 40 degrees Celsius with like 100% humidity. It is a little bit rough. So I kind of get it, but it's sort of something I think everybody should experience at least once. So we bother to haul the telescopes down there and get ourselves set up, and people come and take a look. And it's always funny because people show up and they're like, oh, this must be the hottest weekend of the year down here. And I'm like, it's just hot down here.
And that's where you had the bison were wandering past.
That's where the bison are. Yeah.
Wow.
But there is another, there is one big star party in Cypress Hills, which is to the west of us, the neighboring province is Alberta. Cypress Hills is an interprovincial park. It's right on the line. And every August new moon is the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party there. And that's a proper star party where there's usually about 300 astronomers that will attend, and presentations during the day. And it's the highest elevation in Canada east of the Rocky Mountains. So it's usually dry, which means no mosquitoes, which is a very rare and unique thing in this province in the summertime. But it's a pretty good site too. It's not quite as dark as Grasslands, but you do gain some elevation, so there's some trade-offs there.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? We were joking, one night there was a little bit of humidity in the air, and but the wind was up, and could we quite see the zodiacal line? Maybe we couldn't see the Genghis-Shane. It was that sort of night, and people saying, "Well, it's not that good, isn't it?" I said, "God, I wish my sky was back home with this bad."
Yeah.
Mark, I want to ask a question about traveling with the refractor, because the 90 millimeter Megrez is not a tiny telescope; it's a smaller telescope, but did you take that on as a carry-on, or did you?
Yeah, correct. Yes. Yeah. So I bought one of these cameras made by a company called Vanguard, and they make sort of tough camera cases.
Okay.
So I bought one that was airline, meets the carry-on size restrictions. And then it has a central section that you can put the telescope in. And there's little pockets around it. So you put camera lens, the eyepieces, the binocular all go in there. Little finder scopes, I have a little red dot finder. That all goes in, sketching kit, spare batteries, notebook, pocket sky atlas, that can all go in the case. That comes with me in the cabin. So that just goes in the overhead locker. And then in the suitcases, I'll have my tents, sleeping bag, tripods, star tracker. That all goes in the hold.
So when you're going through security with that Vanguard case with all that optical gear in it, any troubles going through security? Just throw it on the conveyor belt, goes through the X-ray.
Yeah, it all goes through X-ray. It doesn't come glowing green out the other end. They must have hundreds of photographers going through. We think it's something special. I just say I'm a photographer. I think I've been searched once, but that might have just been a random search. I've never had any problems taking stuff through. Sometimes it's because they're into photography or into astronomy as well. They say, "What's in here? We want to have a look at it." So the funniest thing I have heard is, people get their DSLR cameras and then put the Peltier cooler on the back.
Okay, yeah.
So when it gets X-rayed, you've then got this camera with this metal thing welded to the back of the sensor with loads of wires coming off it. And apparently that's a surefire way to get stopped by security.
Yeah.
But not the regular telescope. Yeah, that's good to know, because that's sort of one of those questions that's often debated on the forums and that sort of thing. And I've traveled with my FS60. I've traveled with it both ways in the cabin as well as in the storage, and definitely would recommend taking the optics out and traveling with them in the cabin, or taking the scope in the cabin for sure. Yeah, it's just not worth it down below.
So one of the things I have been toying with, and I'd love to know if you guys have ever seen this, but making one of those, maybe a 12 or a 14-inch, but one of those travel Dobsonians.
Oh, yeah.
Really lightweight, utter skeleton tube assembly. And then you'd have a 12-inch, under these dark skies that you can put the primary mirror and your eyepieces in the secondary. That all goes into the case in your overhead cabin, in the overhead compartment. Again, while the truss tubes, they can go in the hold. But then you arrive and you've got a 12-inch Dob, not a 90mm refractor.
Yeah, that's one of the intriguing things. We've had a couple folks on recently that are into amateur telescope making. And that is the one. Well, there's many things that intrigue me about that, but having a large aperture travel telescope is one of the key things. Like, I think that would be amazing to be able to build one and then, take it to the Winter Star Party in Florida.
Yeah, that would be cool, wouldn't it? To have a nice big Dob out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we had a guy bring one of the Obsession ultralights with them to the grasslands.
18-inch. Yeah,
yeah,
an 18.
brought an 18-inch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was from Germany. He came all the way from Germany to observe there. But it's surprising how seldom we get people. Usually it's like one or two people every year that have come, and they have, some sort of prior astronomy experience. But then, like, the other however many dozen people that are there, it's just like sort of a fun thing to do on a one weekend of the year kind of thing for them. Do they do I was looking at the schedule for the Winter Star Party there, and do they do public observing there? It's just says like public observing a bunch of nights, or is it just mostly the amateurs that are observing there?
So it was mostly the amateurs, I think, because they have to pay to hire the campsite. You have to pay to come in. Even if you came in for just one night, you still got to pay your entrance fee. So there's not members of the public. We did have one problem on it was actually on several nights. Luckily, it didn't affect us too much, but they were resurfacing the highway that runs past the campsite. And you could hear the cursing from the far end, because, of course, they're working at night, so that's obviously when the traffic's less. But they were setting up those massive spotlights, just to do their construction work. And it was just by sheer chance, they happened to be going past the campsite on the night, on the week that the Star Party is there.
Of course.
But we were sheltered. Luckily, we could see it in the distance. You can see the sort of glow. But you see, we didn't observe over there. We observed over here. But they got a schedule to keep, and they're under contract to deliver the road resurfacing in a certain period of time. So they weren't stopping for no one. But there was a lot of people cursing at the far end. So hopefully that road will be resurfaced and won't need to be touched for the next 20 years or however long a road surface lasts out there.
Yeah, we've had similar experiences in the grasslands. So it's surrounded by a lot of farmland. And when we've gone later in the year, August, September, sometimes they're harvesting, whatever crop they had planted. And there is a little bit of light, but there's also usually a lot of dust in the air that they kick up, which, is kind of annoying, but it's just one of those random events that you sort of accept when you go, on destination astronomy trips. You just can't control all of the variables. So you do what you can.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have some more questions about like using the 28-inch down there, just because it's such a big telescope. When you guys were using that, did you point it at like M42, the Orion Nebula, or the Horsehead, or any of those sort of objects?
Oh, of course, yeah, every night.
And when you were looking at them, like what did you see, and were you able to see any color in them?
So didn't see any color in the 28-inch. I get that sort of that green, that milky grey.
Okay.
Color. But I mean, it's like looking at Cotton Wool. I think I'm always going to go out and say, looking at the Orion Nebula through a telescope is the only deep sight object that looks better in the eyepiece than it does in an image.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I see images of the Orion Nebula, to capture all that faint outer stuff, you've got to overexpose the core. Whereas, of course, when you look through a telescope, you've got those 4 bright stars of the trapezium. Plus, of course, there's loads of other stars around it in a 28-inch scope. You've got those really faint stars embedded in the nebulosity. You've got the dust lanes. You've got that really bright bar. Was it the Huygens bar? You've got the fish mouth. You can see M43 alongside it. And it's just, I love sketching and I love getting the notebook out and trying to see and I look at the Orion Nebula through a 28-inch scope and I think, that's a week's project to do that, to capture that. All the delicate little cotton wool-like, cloud-like nebulosity. It is amazing. Absolutely just blows you away, that looking through the big scope. So that was often our warm-up night. And if people were visiting and wondering to have a look past, that was the classic object to show them in the telescope. And the only downside, of course, when you look through the 90mm Meg ray, of course, it doesn't look a bit like it. So that's the problem. Never look through a telescope you can't afford.
Yeah, that's good advice. I like it.
So what else? The M81, M82, the all the classic objects. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. M1, the bright comets. Waiting for the Virgo cluster to come up. So Markarian's chain, M87. There was just so many things to see, and it was just wonderful. Being able to see that. It became quite hard. Certainly going through Virgo, so the 28-inch had go-to and tracking, and the 22-inch was push-to. But then you often sometimes have to tweak it a little bit. So you're trying to work it out with the tail rad and trying to with the wide-angle eyepiece. But going through Virgo, you're not star hopping, you were galaxy hopping.
Yeah.
Particularly the bit around Markarian's chain, trying to work out, the eyes and the ones alongside, and then this one and this one. Also, that must be M87, and that must be this, and that must be that. But it wasn't the stars you're using; it was the galaxies. There was just that many in the field of view at any one time.
Wow.
There was the hockey stick, the whale and the little ones. It's got the calf, hasn't it, alongside the one that's curved like a whale's back. All those cool galaxies.
Fornax a bit, I think, taking a look at some of those objects.
Fornax was setting because it's a little bit further towards the west, but so we call was it 1365 NGC 1365, that spiral galaxy. M83, that was.
I was going to ask about M83, because it's so low from our latitudes, right?
So I think from England, because it's the last, is it? It's right over to one side, isn't it? It's the furthest. Trying to get my bearings right, furthest west, isn't it, of all the Messier of the sort of Virgo cluster galaxies, isn't it? And it's quite far south. So I think I've only seen it a handful of times from the UK over, say, 20 years, because it rises so late in that spring sky. And of course, there it is. It's 20 degrees, 30 degrees up in the sky. You can see the spiral arms, you can see the star clouds and stuff in it. So, M83, I've never had that view of it back home in the UK. And there it is, high, bright, easy to see.
Nice. Nice. Very
Yeah,
good.
you sort of run out of things. And we looked at Mars. And of course, even though Mars is getting really quite small now, we're sort of several months past opposition.
Yeah.
You know, you can still see the dark markings on it. You still see the desert features. You know,
So that must be something
big telescope.
That must have been something to see through those big 22 and 28-inch scopes.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Very neat. Very neat. So if someone was going to go to the Winter Star Party there in Florida, what would be sort of some general advice? Like how much planning in that did you have to do to kind of get geared up to go? Or is it pretty easy to go in there since they cater to astronomers?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy once you're there. The hard part is the logistics of getting there.
Yeah.
So, of course, you got to make sure you got accommodation sorted. So are you going to camp overnight? Are you going to stay locally and drive in and out? Have you got a vehicle? Travel, getting all the sort of what you have to do. What's the American thing? You got to. Well, we have to. I don't know if you Canadians have to, but we have to do an ESTA, the travel authorization.
No,
so you got to type all that stuff in. Yeah, you just cross the border, don't you? We used to do the same in Europe, in Britain, but for some reason we decided we didn't want to travel freely and easily. Anyway, so logistically it's hard. Once you're there, it's fine. I had a hire car as well because, of course, I flew into Miami and then stayed overnight at the airport hotel. So, it's a long day. I'm a couple of hours from London, so it's a 2-hour drive. You've got to be there 2 hours early, and it's a 10-hour flight. So the last thing I want to do is then jump in a hire car and drive for 3 hours. So I stayed overnight at the airport hotel and then drove to the following morning. So I think that's what I say. The logistics is the hard part.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I think you'd have a great time if you took a pair of binoculars, a camera on a tripod, and introduce yourself to the people around you. You'd have a wonderful time just by doing that. Everyone's so friendly. The talks, the speakers, the presentations. It's really good fun. Sun cream, mosquito repellent. You're definitely going to need that. And then, also the other thing I also do is I have to buy a chair, a seat, because of course you can't stand up for the entire week. So every week I drop into my brain's going too much now. But what's the sort of hardware, the American hardware store that's in every town?
Home Depot.
And then you go into the one in Marathon, you buy your little camping $15 chair. And of course, the last thing I want to do is put that on the plane to come back because that's going to put me over my weight limit. So every year I give away a chair. I keep saying, you got to bring it back so I can then use it, next year.
Never see it again.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's sort of the routine. So they opened the gates at midday, or they did early. Well, the problem they had was this construction traffic. So they had to open that. They didn't want a big load of cars all parked up outside the gate at midday. So they actually opened the doors earlier this time to avoid that sort of cars getting in the way of the construction traffic. So you then have that charge at midday to get into to pick the prime spots. But luckily everyone goes to the berm where the horizons are better. So I then turn right and nip into the sort of more sheltered spots down by the trees.
Yeah.
Last question for me, Mark. And I'm not sure if you would know or not, but how many people come from outside of North America, or is there very many at all?
There's not many. Not many. I'm amazed at how many people come from the sort of further away states. You get a lot of people from Florida, Carolina, Georgia, sort of states around, sort of relatively local. But even so, people from northern Florida still got an all-day drive. It's still 6-hour drive from northern Florida. But there's not many who had different accents. But I take my hat off to the people from Montreal and Quebec and northern Toronto from Ontario. It's a 3-day drive to get there. They reckon about 20 hours driving. And they said as you head out of Canada, you hit the northern states. You start to see the snow disappear, and then by the time you're in Georgia, the Carolinas, the snow, it's nice and warm again. You have this wonderful week, and you drive back, and it gets colder and colder, and the snow starts appearing.
I've done that drive before. It's not fun.
Goodness knows how people do it. So I have a wonderful time. I sit there on the plane, bite to eat, watch a movie, have a beer, have a sleep. So, and I get out of the other end, and I have a 2-hour drive home. So
nice. Anything to add to this trip to Florida that people might be interested in, Mark?
I say just you got to do it. I'd love to do more American style parties. We get to see these objects that's so much further south. Very warm, very welcoming. Being under those tropical skies, you say goodbye to the grey skies of Northern Europe, and go and enjoy those views. Down by the tropics. It's absolutely wonderful. Thoroughly recommended.
Nice. Well,
what I'm hoping is that not everyone goes. So, I want to have my space for next year.
Exactly. So you're planning to go back next year as well, eh?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Would you guys consider it? Would you guys go?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm always interested in winter getaways, to someplace warm. And if I can do astronomy, that's even better. So this is, I'm going to look into it next year, Mark, for sure.
Oh, fantastic.
I have gone to Florida to do astronomy. I just didn't go to the Winter Star Party.
So the one I'd love to do, and I read about it in Cloudy Nights, they do one in Australia. I can't remember, Oz Sky?
The Oz Sky. Yeah, somebody was sending us info on that. Yeah, that one looks like a great time.
Oh my goodness. And it's run by those Australian amateurs who run it. So they provide the telescopes. So you just turn up with your favorite eyepiece and your notebook and your camera, and they provide the telescopes. And do you want to use the 25-inch, the 20-inch, the big binoculars? They'll set it up for you. But you're staying in a motel. They turn all the lights off in the motel, so you can see all the southern Australian sites. So one year I must have to go further south and love to go to the southern hemisphere, see the Magellanic Clouds, see the Milky Way right overhead, see Eta Carina, right overhead.
Yeah.
That's the dream.
Yes.
I missed my trip to New Zealand. Looks like I'm going to the Netherlands next.
Oh, well, we're not that far from the Netherlands. So
I know. We'll probably go to England on the way, I think.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I'd love to go to a star party in England, since that's where I really caught the astronomy bug. Ironically, you caught the astronomy bug in Canada.
Yes. When I heard, it was such sad news, wasn't it? Terence Dickinson's passed away.
That's right. Yeah. He passed away on the 1st of February, unfortunately.
Oh, so sad, isn't it? Yes, because he gave a talk at the school I was working at in Ontario, and that was when Comet Hale-Bopp and Comet Hyakutake crossed the sky.
Yeah.
And it was with my borrowed pair of binoculars, and I thought, well, I've seen 2 comets, and they've both been amazing, so therefore all comets must be amazing. And little did I know it'd be about 25 years before I saw another really bright big comet.
Exactly. Well, it was great having you on, Mark. Anything else to add?
No, that's been great. Thank you very much for having me. So I wish you all clear skies and clear and warm and mosquito-free skies.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. And listeners, be sure to check out Mark's YouTube channel. Like, he just does it for fun like we do. He's on YouTube, Refreshing Views. That's where you'll find his videos on visual observing, equipment, observatory tours, which I've been really enjoying, sketching, imaging. He does both sketching and imaging, and does some observing travel for stargazing. Quick note of thanks also to our Patreon supporters, Troy, Blake, and Chris, and everybody else who supports the show. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.